This episode is brought to you by Windrose Recovery, a family of premier addiction treatment programs in southeastern Wisconsin. Privately owned, Windrose Recovery offers a full continuum of personalized care for those struggling with addiction, including the Manor for residential treatment, Midwest Detox for inpatient detoxification, and Windrose Counseling for outpatient treatment. With highly personalized treatment focused on trauma, Dr. Chantal Thomas and her expert team offer an authentic experience, creating the kind of deep emotional change that's crucial for long-term recovery. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, call Windrose Recovery at 414-409-5300. You can learn more about Windrose Recovery by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting windroserecovery.com. Thank you for listening to The Path to Authenticity. My name's Tom Gentry. I think of this show as the opposite of small talk. You'll hear real conversations with real people who know who they are. We talk about what makes them who they are, how they became who they are, and how we might become truer expressions of who we are.
Hi, I'm Aly Paws, and this is The Path to Authenticity.
Deep in the Santa Monica Mountains, Her Escape Vortex offers a unique and truly fantastic setting for your next spiritual retreat. The lavender garden, the fire pit overlooking the Topanga Canyon sunset, and the Moroccan furnished yurt on this magical property provide the atmosphere for an inspiring and transformative experience. A sacred place ideal for yoga and wellness retreats as well as cleansing and healing ceremony of all kinds, Her Escape Vortex is part of a community of people eager for personal and spiritual growth. Visit thepathtooauthenticity.com/Her Escape Vortex or click on the link in the show notes for more information. If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If not, thanks for coming back. I'm Tom Gentry, and this is The Path to Authenticity. Episode 134 for July 27th, 2021. Today would have been my dad's 95th birthday. It's also the date of birth of Sasha Lipskaya, who was recently on the podcast. She has a podcast of her own, which I'll be featured on soon. I think by the end of the month, she said she was going to try to get it out. Anyway, we did a 2-part interview this past week for her podcast. I posted that sound on Patreon. The second part was an Instagram Live. So you can find it on her IGTV at Sasha Lipskaya. Anyway, I have some other podcasts that I've been working on. They're 2 separate podcasts, both with former guests of the show. Both of them we've been talking about it for a while. One of them longer, and it's in full swing now. Will definitely be out by the beginning of the year. I thought I'd go back to the episode that guest was in and take some clips from the interview I did with him. Then I listened to it and I realized this is the episode where I learned the lesson about not holding the mic in my hand. It was very early on. I don't think I had microphone stands yet. He said some really good stuff and just sounds bad. So it really brought to light for me how much the sound of the show has improved. And especially a couple months back, because with the device I was using to record from the beginning, it's supposed to have the capability to record more than one track at once. And it does, just not with the computer, so the USB connection channels the two together. So instead of two parts of a stereo track, it ends up being both mono tracks, his voice and my voice, channeled into one, and very hard to edit that way. Very hard to go in and fix things like noise from one's microphone. So 2 or 3 months ago, I got a new device, which is newer technology, much cleaner sound. And now I can go in and make my voice louder, make the other person's voice louder. There's static on their end. I can get rid of it. Just makes it so much easier. Yet, it takes a lot more time because it was a futile thing to try to edit before, when both tracks were mixed together and I couldn't separate voices. And so I kind of just didn't do it. I tried to get rid of anything I could, but I didn't spend a lot of time on it. Now I'm spending a lot more time providing a clean product. And I'm learning how to use the software and do some tricks and make it easier for myself. So anyway, what I had planned to do, like I said, was I thought about even doing an episode where I re-released that one, cleaned it up a little bit first and re-released it to you guys, and then revealed that I'm doing this podcast with him. But that's going to have to wait. Then there's another podcast that I'm really excited about that is really in the concept stages, and we'll probably get going on it pretty soon. Yeah, I would have never guessed. It's exciting stuff. I didn't necessarily see myself helping people produce podcasts, but that's what I'm doing. Yeah, it's exciting. But this episode features another Clubhouse friend. Her name's Aly Paws. She's a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher. Not only a teacher, but she trains other yogis to teach. And Aly she's just one of those people. Listening to her, hearing her story, she's the girl that maybe is just too cool for everybody in high school. And yet, the guys fall in love with her. And, she's just a really interesting person. She's had her hands in all kinds of stuff. And we talk about poetry. We talk about breakdancing. We talk about yoga. We're all over the map. So I just really enjoyed talking to her. And I think one of the things that stood out to me really about this episode is she's such a joyful person. She laughed a lot, and it just really came across how happy she is. And it always makes me happy to see someone who's that happy. So there are some imperfections in the sound as a result of recording it on Clubhouse, which has been true with a number of the recent episodes. The sound quality of the guest leaves a bit to be desired when I record it that way. But the benefit is that people can listen live. And generally what I do is do the interview, and then when it's over, open the floor for questions. And had some nice discussion after this one. So check out the Path to Authenticity on Clubhouse. Going to try to do more of these. It just seems like a no-brainer to me, a place to build the audience. And it's definitely been a place to find guests. And I can't say enough about the friends I've met on Clubhouse. I would have never imagined. Soul level connections with people from all over the world. Really cool stuff. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Aly. I think you will. So here you go. Aly Paws. This all happened very suddenly. I just reached out to you yesterday. And I have to tell you, one of the things that I love about doing this podcast is it just gives me an excuse to reach out to someone who I would like to talk to and get to know better. And it's really as simple as that. I've seen you on Clubhouse and I've followed you on Instagram, and I've always liked what you had to say. And I'm also, I practice yoga. I'm not necessarily in vinyasa shape right now. I'm a little off with my practice, but so yeah, I'm really happy to get the opportunity to get to know you a little better.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad this worked out.
Yeah. So why don't you tell the listener what you do?
Well,
isn't that an interesting question? What do I do?
It is a very interesting question, and I'm pausing for a reason, because when I get asked that question, at least when I was younger, I kind of froze up. And this is more of like a wise pause rather than a freezing up. Oh my God, I have to answer that question, and I actually don't have a purpose right now, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And I actually freaked out when I was younger. Like, what? I don't have a career. I don't, I was just traveling the world and a little hippie and a dancer in the film industry. I was just all over the map. And it really became something that I wanted to make my grandma proud. I just felt like she was not proud of what I chose to do in life. And that the yoga will come up in a second there. But to do now, for me, when I hear that, it's more, how do I be? If I'm present with whatever I'm doing, I'm being and embodying exactly what I'm choosing. So yeah, I'll just tell you what I do as in a career, I guess.
It's okay. Yeah. I'm totally with you. I
love dissecting those questions.
Yeah.
So really, my passion has been yoga ever since I started practicing 18 years ago. So I've been teaching yoga for about 16 years. And now I run yoga teacher training courses. Been doing that the last, since 2015, just running yoga retreats and, Peru and Costa Rica. And then teacher trainings, collaborating with Epic Self and running trainings in Thailand, Costa Rica, and then Canada. And then I started doing them online actually in 2018 to have a little bit of a transition. Not that I knew that COVID was going to happen, because I obviously didn't in 2018, but I was living the nomad lifestyle, and I really wanted to be able to reach a global audience and be able to be financially secure as I traveled. So I started offering trainings and just courses online. And so that in itself, yoga training and teaching, but also integrative yoga practitioner. So I've been a health nut since I was younger. And that has always been a part of my life. And I finally just decided to study with Dr. Stephen Cabral. And then in about 2010, I ended up getting my registered massage therapy. And in Canada, it is quite extensive. We need 2,200 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, but it was like pre-med. Like we had to learn way more muscles and bones than doctors ever have to. And so it was really intense, but in a good way, because I already had a little bit of yoga background, but I wanted to dive a lot deeper into the understanding of the body and how it worked, and then integrate that with yoga. So I actually took that after I had been practicing and teaching yoga for a while. And then I got further into the healing arts with craniosacral therapy and somato emotional release, because to me, trauma is and has been such a huge topic lately, but also as the world's kind of waking up and also experiencing trauma, particularly in the last year, I feel like finally it's something that people want to address so that they can live a more free life within their physical body, emotional, spiritual, and beyond, right? So those are kind of the aspects that keep me moving and rolling and in my purpose, with yoga being the main one, but I really have a passion for doing the cranial sacral. I love the results I get with people. So yeah, that in a nutshell, that kind of wraps it up.
Well, that's a lot. One of the things about trauma is that, I don't know as a society if there's really a general understanding of how adversely it affects our quality of life. I think most of the time when people hear the word trauma, they think capital T trauma, or they feel like it's an exaggeration of something else. But, we go through these little things in life and we carry them around in our bodies because, we adapt to not experience them emotionally because it hurts too bad. And then the next thing you know, we're adults and we have all these concealed wounds that we're carrying around, and it's keeping us stuck, right?
Yeah, it lives within the tissues, and that's what I have realized through my treatments and just being, even just getting treatments on myself and the trauma that I've been through. And like you said, there's so many different, and there should be really no comparison. And no one should be comparing their trauma and their wounds. Everyone's very unique and specific to what they experience. And trauma is really giving it's your nervous system, giving your nervous system what it needs to process it. So whatever that is, whatever you have experienced, it could be something as little as just being shouted at when you were little, or your mom grabbing your hand, you're about to get hit by a car and she pulls you back. And of course, death and physical and sexual abuse, and it goes on, right? But trauma acts the same way, is it affects your nervous system in a way that unrolls within the tissues of your body. So when you get triggered by it and you actually don't realize what it is or what's coming up, then and you actually don't even have the tools to understand how to hold space for it, and or the person that you're with to hold space for you, it just snowballs into another piece and layer of trauma, right? Because the trigger is almost triggering another trauma. Yeah. So it's really good to educate ourselves. And I'm reading a book right now, actually, the Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I haven't, but I know of it. Bessel van der Kolk. Is that how you say his name? Is that right?
Yeah. I have it here, actually. It's just, what is it? Bessel van der Kolk. Yeah. Sounds European of some sort.
Yeah. Well, between him and who's the other guy who's written a lot about it? Gabor Mate.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
He's so brilliant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've never gone down the rabbit hole with it, but with my work, I end up encountering people who've experienced trauma and, the work that I've done on myself. I've, of course, uncovered some of the stuff that I went through as a kid that 20 years ago I would have never identified as traumatic, but now I know that it was. That's the other thing about it. Being an addiction counselor, I work with a lot of guys in early recovery and talking about family of origin issues, and they tend to say, I just didn't have anything like that. Like this rosy picture of their childhood. And then 15 years later, it's like, when it all, I guess when you have the wisdom to really deal with it, or you're at peace enough, or when you're ready for it, it reveals itself to you.
Yeah. Or some people don't even realize that they have had it, especially if it's something so deep and heavy. They tend to bury it, and it doesn't get revealed until later on when they are doing the work as an adult. And that happens quite a bit, actually. And it's actually happened to a few people that I know that have explored with plant medicines and ayahuasca, and really showing them that memory and unlocking it deep in the subconscious, because that's where you bury it. So it's hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the Carl Jung quote, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we will call it fate.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where do you live, Aly? I know you're on Mountain Time.
Mm-hmm. I'm just near Calgary in
Okay.
Canada. We're actually, I live in jail.
And what now?
I'm living in jail in Canada. Just kidding. It's pretty much a jail here. The restrictions to cross the border is really bad.
Oh, okay.
But no, I'm not in jail.
And have you always lived in Canada, or were you born in Canada and raised in Canada?
Yeah, I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, which I know that somehow I want to believe my soul chose that. But I think that in a past life, I grew up somewhere in the tropics for sure, California or Costa Rica. But my mom grew up in, they actually moved from Scotland. My grandma was in the war. Or my grandpa was. My grandma was a war bride and my mom was a war baby from Scotland, and they came and settled into Saskatchewan and then moved to Edmonton, and I grew up there until about 19, and then I moved away to, well, my parents moved away when I was 16. I kicked them out of the house. They didn't kick
They
me
moved
out.
away from you.
Yes. And then I met back with them when I was 19 in a place that I wasn't that fond of. So I ended up going to Banff. Do you know Banff Lake Louise?
I know of it.
Yeah.
I know it's beautiful. I've seen photos and
Yeah, stunning, stunning. And so I ended up doing some snowboarding there and just competing. I got really heavy into competition. And this kind of is how I got into yoga eventually. And that's another story if we want to go there.
yeah, absolutely.
It's the snowboarding. I was very competitive since day one. Just being an athlete my whole life. I started with judo actually when I was 8, and then I went into gymnastics, which really stemmed for a nice foundation for all these other sports that I got into. And then track and field, soccer, basketball, everything, you name it, I was doing it. And then I got really heavy into snowboarding and competed there, and then moved to Vancouver, BC, and lived there for about 8 years. And that's where I continued competing, but I kind of transitioned from snowboarding to skateboarding. I was just one of those kids that was like, oh, everyone's doing it, I'm going to do something different. Like, I need to be different. So I kind of got over all the busyness, the money, the lineups, the gear. It was just a lot. And so skateboarding to me was way more freedom. Same with surfing. You just grab your board and go. And so that with breakdancing, I got really into competition with breakdancing.
Oh my gosh.
Toured the world. Well, sorry, not the world, 50 cities in the States, which felt like the world. And that was an interesting 2 months in a summer. And I was actually dancing with injuries. So that's kind of the transition I made at that point, from having different injuries, from a huge one that I got in snowboarding that debilitated it moved my whole pelvis. And I was in and out of physio and chiropractor for years, just looking for a pain-free. And, obviously I was numbing from other things as well, drugs, alcohol, name it. So it got into more of, okay, so I'm looking for this deeper meaning. But I was also just wanting to heal. from these injuries. And as we all know, or maybe we don't know, that emotionally we get kind of stabbed at that point before it manifests physically. So whatever we're kind of going through emotionally, that'll eventually show up. Not all the time, but most of the time. And so I went through this whole I need to heal kind of thing, and yoga eventually was presented to me. And my first class I went to, and it was like mind-boggling how I'd felt. I thought, man, why have I not been doing this my whole life? Because everything's
first
timing.
class, huh?
First class, I sunk into like, I'm home. This is meant for me. I've been stretching through sports and stuff, but not that integration of like looking at yourself, feeling all the sensations, breathing, tapping into the mind-body coordination with soul. It blew me away. And so I walked out of my first class, and I always tell this story because it was so impactful for me. The teacher at the time, this was Ted. He owns Moksha Yoga now. I'm not sure if he still does or not, but I said to him, man, there's just so much to learn. And he said, there is, Aly, but there's so much to unlearn. And I was like, oh, frig, now I'm on a mission. The rest of my life has been since that day to unlearn and unwind all my reprogramming and all the crap and all the conditioning. Like, okay, thanks, Ted. I wish he was listening to that would be awesome if he heard this one day.
Well, you should send it to him when we finish it.
I will. Yeah, because I wrote a poem after that about that day.
Wow. That's great. Well, you remind me, and I've seen you've posted some stuff from, is it Patanjali? Is that how you say it?
Patanjali.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have the little book. It's actually a couple feet away from me right now, the Yoga Sutras.
Yeah.
The restraint of modification of mind stuff.
Mm-hmm. Chitta vritti narodaha.
Oh, listen to you. That's where I went in my head when you talked about unlearning, because, we already were pure and perfect before, know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really just about, like, if I can just shut up all the voices in my head and just do what I would instinctively do, there's nothing better I could possibly do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that should be the goal.
Yeah, that's the process of this whole practice of yoga, is just remembering who we are. Those layers that get piled on top of us in the fabrication of our mind, of the identities and the roles that we think we are. And I have to be like this and this and this. But when we sit quiet and you just breathe and remember that you do have the tools, you are your own guru. Like that's precious. That's gold. But we as humans somehow need that outer extension of validation. And that doesn't mean it's wrong to reach out for a hand or whatever that is, but you truly do know the answers once you get through all the crap, though, the impurities. And that's why the yoga asanas and the physical practice is really good to flush that out, because you need to create space for the channel to be connected to your intuition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. When I'm in a good routine of practicing, I do everything better. Mm-hmm. I just feel better, and it just beyond physically, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Just everything's clicking. But okay, so I want to go back to a couple things here. So tell me about your grandma. You said you wanted to make your grandma proud, and that was a big part of just very important to you. So tell me about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So as I chose to be a snowboarder, because I was a little bit of a rebel, and I had a lot of rage in me. I just needed to just channel it somehow. But it's also an art form, and it was like my dance. I really enjoyed it. And it was part of just me. And my grandma didn't understand that I wanted to choose that as a career. I really wanted to get deeper into coaching and one day go to the Olympics and all that, all of the things. And she just didn't really look at it that way. She thought of it as fun. And although it was, why not have a career that you can have fun with?
Right.
And so there's just old school, like not really understanding. And it wasn't like you need to go be a doctor or a lawyer. It just was out of her realm of understanding. So they didn't really support it as much as, financially, I definitely was on my own with all of that. I would work at a shop, then I would get a free snowboard in a competition, and I would just kind of work my way up that way, just determined. And so, and then I got really deep into partying, which kind of led me down the wrong path. Not the wrong path. I don't like saying right and wrong because we learn from everything that we go through. And that was my choice at the time. So that being said, I don't know, I just felt like she was disappointed in me, and I just didn't like that feeling. And so once I went to massage school, of course, when I come to her house and massage her feet, she's all like, "You're the best grandchild now." Like, of course she's going to be proud of me. Yeah. So that I just finally sunk into, wow, now she sees me. And and I think it's okay. It's okay to do that because it gave me a why, like, and I didn't need that validation or approval from her, but I guess I did. But it brought me into where I am now, which is a beautiful place of healing and helping others heal and fully in service. So I'm glad that she wanted to see more.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things I went through as a young adult is, there were things that were possible for me that were beyond what my parents and siblings saw as possible, and it sounds like sort of the same thing was going on with you. If the people around us tasked with supporting us don't see how it can work, like it just seems impossible to them that you could make a living being a snowboarder or a coach, right? I mean, it just seems outlandish. So then how can they support it? They can't because they don't get it,
Yeah.
So, but it was the purpose that you didn't yet have. It was, I guess, wasn't it? That you needed it from her early on until you could figure out on your own what it was, I guess.
Yeah. And I really looked up to her as well. She was, and I mean, my mom as well. My mom was usually pretty supportive of it, but my whole family saw a shift in me when I started doing yoga. And that was about 18 years ago. And they just knew. And then when I wasn't practicing and I decided to take a month or two off or whatever, and I decided to do something and go this way or that way, which I didn't travel far away from the center of the path too long. I always knew when to come back. And when I did, it reassured me and made me realize, this is why I do this practice. And this is how people, my family members are always saying, you're so much better when you're practicing yoga. Do not ever quit. Like, yeah, it's with me for life. It's part of my being right now.
Well, I'm tempted to ask you about the breakdancing thing, but I feel like we'd go down a whole rabbit hole with that and age ourselves. But I was one of those kids who my best friend had, like he had a bedroom in his house where he lined the floors with cardboard so he could spin effectively. It was, I mean, when I was a kid, that was at its height, so.
Oh, yeah. We stepped it up to lino.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it was a carpeted room, and he was, he was an inventive kid, and that was and he was athletic too, so he could, he could do all the stuff. I could never, like, I could do, I could do the centipede for a hot minute, but that was really about it. That was about it.
Yeah,
for
the
me.
rug burn is not that much fun.
No, it's not. It's not. But what I do want to talk to you about is I've noticed that you're in a lot of poetry rooms on Clubhouse, and you mentioned writing a poem a little bit ago. Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. Actually, okay, so it's through the House of Creativity and Soul Shield, and we do it Friday nights at 8:30 Eastern Time, and it's just such an amazing room and just vibes, soulful vibes. A lot of musicians come through, poets, and what it did was, and Clubhouse has actually ignited that fire again. I used to write when I just saw my first poem. I think it was like I was about 16 or something when I wrote it, and then another one when I was about 19. And then throughout the years of my 20s, I would write occasionally here and there. And then I just kind of stopped. And I got really deep into the yogic texts and just teaching yoga. And that creative part of me, randomly I would write something down or do a couple paragraphs here and there, but it really wasn't full poetry until the last, I think, when I started Clubhouse and I started going on these poetry rooms. And then I went into InQ's workshop, and he's one of my favorite poets. Oh, he's incredible. Tom, you got to check out InQ, INQ. His first name's Adam, but he was in the whole hip hop slam poetry days as well. And his book is called Inquire Within. And so I got re-inspired from that workshop. And in the last little bit, I just wrote like probably 10 poems. And of course, I don't know, I would have loved to share one, but I only have one off heart. And that was the one I wrote when I was 19. And I was a little bit all over the map with my life. Actually, was it 19? I think it was in my 20s at some point. And so all of them are on my computer that has died and I need a charger for.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You got to figure that out.
So I can't really share one of those, but I mean, one day, or you can come to the poetry room.
So do you have like a favorite poet? Like, what do you like?
Yeah. I mean, I love Rumi, of course.
That makes sense.
The Prophet, like Khalil Gibran.
Yeah.
Those are classic. Hafiz, and there's also, Inquire with it. Like InQ is probably one of my favorite. Obviously, he's our age. I'm looping you in my age bracket. Okay. I don't know how old you are.
I think I can live with that.
But yeah, I mean, I think just those classic ones. I don't really follow a lot of poets except for Rumi, and I mean, that's about it, like the classic ones.
Are you a reader other than like health stuff and wellness?
I love reading. Yeah, I have a lot of books.
So have you ever read Robert Frost's work at all, or have you read E. Cummings, any of that stuff?
I mean, I've obviously heard because they're classic. I don't sit down and read them, though. Robert Frost, that's the gold one, right?
Nothing Gold Can Stay. Yeah, which exactly. You probably remember from The Outsiders, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The one he's most well known for is The Road Not Taken.
Yes.
The imagery in his poetry is just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
There's dialogue in his poetry that's really interesting, too. There's one, Death of the Hired Man. And my favorite poem of his is one called West Running Brook. You should check that out.
Okay.
He grew up in the Northeast of the United States. So a west running brook in his neck of the woods would be going backwards.
Right.
So that's kind of where it starts.
I was thinking, Robert Burns actually is Robbie Burns. And I actually went to Robbie Burns's cottage or castle or something when I was in Scotland. There's like a museum when I was 10. We
Wow.
went there. Yeah. And I have.
Probably too young to appreciate it, right?
Yeah, well now though, I pick up this like tiny little worn out book with like this leather casing around it, yellow pages. It was my mom or my grandma. They both died within probably a year of each other. And going through all their stuff in their boxes, like obviously I took the classic books. I think this was actually in my mom's shelf. But they both love Robbie Burns, and yeah, I have the book with me now.
Mm.
But
do you know about the book Letters to a Young Poet, Rilke? Do you know that?
No.
You got to read that.
Okay. I should be writing all this down. I'll just listen to the podcast.
Yeah, just listen to it. No, it's Rainier Maria Rilke, who I don't know if he's German or Austrian or what, but it's a series of letters between him and a college student who's studying to be an engineer but wants to be a poet. And so he's writing this master poet to pick what do you think? He sent him some of his writing, and it's incredible. It's really inspiring stuff. Especially, it's something that I think is great for young people to read, just about being who you are and following your heart and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely one you have to check out.
And that kind of circles back to what we were talking about with the, approval and really listening to your own heart and not.
Well, and that's what Rilke was telling him.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need whether I think it's good or not. It doesn't matter. Write if you must write.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you should write, because you could do nothing else. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely like an outlet and a creative outlet for me. And creativity's, one of the top things that's important to me. So that outlet I need is either picking up the guitar and playing it or writing poetry.
You're a guitarist too?
Well, not really. I wouldn't call myself a guitarist. It's it's just playing around is what I call it.
Okay. All right. Do you know how to make a bar chord?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know how to play guitar.
Yeah.
You know how to play guitar. You're just like, I do the same thing. Like, I can strum, but I can't really play. And I can't play a song really all the way through. I mean, I can play 12-bar blues and play around.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that I did for, I don't know, a couple years in my mid-20s, where I spent so much time doing it. It must have been something I really needed at the time to just focus on that. Mm-hmm. And then I went a long time without playing at all. And I was kind of amazed after years and years picking up a guitar that I could still do chord changes. Mm-hmm. I thought it would take so long. I thought I'd basically have to relearn, but not really. Muscle memory.
Mm-hmm. It's very therapeutic.
It is, yes. Okay, so you play guitar, you write poetry. What else do you do creatively?
I would say creatively dancing. I mean, obviously, I love to dance. Yoga is obviously a big part of that creative outlet. Just doing your own, just following your body's sequencing of what it needs to do in that moment. And it's kind of brings out that dancer in me as well. And I mean, I like to sing, but I'm not the best singer.
You going to sing a song for us tonight, Aly?
Yeah, maybe not. But I love combining just playing the guitar and singing for some reason, or even just campfire. If someone pulls out the guitar and starts playing some classic, I just love sing-alongs. Like that's one of my favorite things to do. What's your,
do you have a favorite band or musician?
I love Angus and Julia Stone, like a lot. a sister and brother duo from Australia.
I'm writing this down.
Yeah, they're one of my faves. Just like indie rock folkish.
Yeah, are there any American bands that you?
American bands?
Anybody who I'd know about?
I don't know. I'm just, you know what I like to do actually?
What?
This is kind of off topic what you asked, but I like to dance with 80s music in first thing in the morning. It's like so liberating because we grew up in that, and it's just, it brings up that kind of playfulness, childlike. But yeah, bands in the States, I can't think, there's just so many, I feel.
It's a really good time for music, I feel like, because it's so easy for bands to get music out now compared to when we were kids. Like, you had to get a song on the radio.
Oh yeah.
Like, you had to. Now, I mean, it's just incredible how musicians just hustle and get their stuff on Spotify. And it's really cool, I think. All right. So you got any trainings coming up or anything you want to tell the listeners about?
Absolutely. There's always something going on, Tom.
Okay.
So, well, currently, like the big one is the 200-hour yoga teacher training that I have. And that's the next one is the fall semester, which is September 11th. And that one is all online. And it's basically a 3-month or 2-month. I have a couple different options, but I probably will do the 2-month. And so they're with me the whole 2 months, and it's full 200 hours, not all with me. They have to do some online on their own study time. And yeah, I'm really excited about that one. I've done already, I think about 4 now online, or 3. I can't even count right now. I've done a few anyways, and it's just so profound. I love watching them go through these transitions and transformations from just stepping into, I don't know if I want to do this, I don't know if I can do this, and then just teaching their full class and being proud and confident at the end. And it's just one of my favorite things as a trainer to watch that transition. And so that's in September. And, it's not just the physical practices. We dive deep into anatomy and physiology and the psychology and the philosophy of it, the yoga limbs, all of, yeah. So it encompasses a lot, but you can just go to alypaws.com for all that info. And then, yeah, basic stuff that I'm doing during just weekly and also pre-recorded stuff is the Inner Peace community that we have online. So it's a membership community. And we get together every week. And then if you miss that class, it's recorded and uploaded onto NamaStream platform. And that's only $27 a month now. It'll increase in September, but yeah, now it's really affordable. And that's about it. There's a 60-hour yoga immersion actually for people that don't want to teach or don't necessarily want that to be their main, intention. Which is a nice prerequisite if you are scared to just jump right into the 200-hour. And 60-hour basically just immerses you into the practice of yoga and all the other elements, and you get time with me one-on-one. So, which is pretty valuable.
So how do you find it? I assume you use Zoom or something like that. How do you find doing it remotely rather than face-to-face in terms of like teaching adjustments and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, good question. There's a lot of, there's pros and cons to everything. I feel like people really adjusted well with the pandemic. And of course, we cut out the physical, actual touching adjustments. But there's a way in doing verbal adjustments and really correcting them if you're really articulate with how you're directing them. And also Zoom, you can at least see them. So you can see where their alignment point is, and maybe they need to move their foot this way or that way. And, just being really clear that way with your directions, I found it really good. And obviously the physical part, yeah, sure, that will come back later. I think I might do separate workshops for that. But I find that people really were comfortable just in their own home, and they can just jump on and not have to drive anywhere. And I feel like they kind of got comfortable with that.
That's how I've experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I kind of like that you can do a class with somebody from the other side of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a global community. It's pretty cool.
Now, what I miss though, and I could at this point go, but is the heat.
Yeah.
You know, don't have the heat at home.
So you do hot yoga then?
I do, yeah. And actually, I've never done Bikram, but there's a Bikram studio like half a mile from my place. And I've had some like lower back, hip, like muscle strains that it's like kept me from the mat for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been trying to strengthen my core and kind of work that stuff out before I go back. But yeah, no, I definitely want to try Bikram because I've done the hot 26, you know, that's not as hot as Bikram, but it's the same sequence. And I like that. I do. And I took a yin teacher training that was like a weekend thing a couple years ago.
So,
and I liked that.
do you want me to get I want to respond here so bad, but I want to be mindful with
What?
Oh, it's just I do have some triggers towards Bikram, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not this is all about authenticity, right?
Is that the abuse stuff?
The unethical practices.
Okay. Yes.
But I will just give you my full, this is what fully my own personal experience of different styles and needing things to be hot. I understand why people like that heat for sure. It's very detoxifying, but there's a way, because if we can't rely on the heat, if you're in like a cold country or
Like
cold room,
like Canada,
wherever you are, actually it's super hot right now, but wherever you are, I never want to rely on the external part. Like I always want to be, okay, so I'm using my own body system, my own thermometer. How am I able to do something without reaching out, needing this, that, or the other? So that's why, I mean, even when it comes to props, even though I love using props, I love, love, love them. But if I am traveling and I don't have something, how am I going to use my body in a way or modify that I need to in order to really serve my body and align it to my own needs for right now? So with the heat part though, what I've done, because I started my first class, okay, so one of my first classes was in Bikram until I kind of just realized the extent of the aggression behind it, and it wasn't honoring my body. And I was basically, it was kind of traumatic, to be honest. Some of the teachers back then, they would yell at you, and not in a like a good way, like Indian teachers when I was in India, like that's just their style, right? They're just very militant, and I don't respond well to that. And if I have an injury or if I have something in my body that needs to be handled accordingly, that I know, because I know my body, you don't.
Right.
Or whatever teacher's teaching. And I went into a class one day and I was doing something and she's like, "You're doing it wrong." And I just thought, okay, yeah, I will respect the way this teacher is teaching. I'll listen to her, but I also have to listen to my body, and I'm not going to compromise it like that.
Yeah.
So it just turned me off. And then all these all these things coming out in the news with him didn't really align to what I believed in. Just the philosophy behind it and the ethics behind it. So I just kind of steered away from that, even though, I know that people, that's their first introduction to yoga. So great, like introduce yourself to it that way. And if you want to continue doing it, that's your own path. But just, know that there's other styles that could suit your body, or you could learn how to breathe with ujjayi breath to really heat up the body inside. So you're burning the impurities from the inside out, not the outside in. I don't know if that resonates
Yeah,
with you
yeah,
or makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I hear you.
But all the power to you, brother. Go to that because class.
Well, it's right around the corner, but I like the sweating.
Mhm.
It just feels great. Have you ever been to a sweat lodge?
I have lots, yeah. I love sweats.
So that's the first time I went to a yoga class and it was a hot room. I felt the way I did the first time I walked out of a sweat lodge
Mm-hmm.
after being in it for an hour,
Yeah,
and it's just so invigorating
it is.
to feel the cool air again. It's like you're coming alive,
Yeah.
and I loved it.
Did you ever almost faint in one?
I don't know. I know the first time I went, I'd never done it before, so I didn't know how far I was into I mean, we did the whole thing, like the prayer strands, or I can't remember exactly what you call 'em. But I mean, it was like a several hour long process before we got in the lodge. And then after being in there for a while, I was like, I'm going to have to get out. I got to go to the bathroom.
Mm.
When the guy who was pouring was checking in with everybody, is everybody, and I'm like, I think I need to go to the bathroom. And he didn't shame me or anything like that. But, he basically talked about being committed
Mm-hmm.
to the process, and I stuck it out. Yeah, the first time, I mean, it's the heated rocks, and then when they start pouring, and then breathing that. I mean, I'd never sweated like that in my life. Like it was,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just pouring out of my pores. But yeah, no, it was hard the first time, but I've only done it twice. The second time was, I knew what to expect, so that was helpful. But I'd like to do it again sometime soon.
It's an intense experience. I was in Costa Rica, and it teaches you really about how powerful the mind, it's a mind thing practice. And I was laying there, laying beside, like on the ground, and there was one little tiny crack through the little, I don't even know, how it puts
Yeah,
tarps or something over
little
top
tiny bit
through
of
the
air
door.
coming
Yeah.
in.
And I was like putting
Yeah,
my face so close to it, like,
yeah,
but eventually I started to settle into that. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to die. Like, just be
yeah. It's
calm.
gonna be okay, Allie.
Be calm.
Well, but I remember like kind of trying to stay low because the heat, because I mean, it's pretty tough. It is. It's like if you haven't done it before, I mean, it's intense.
Yeah,
It really is, but it's beautiful too. It's really a great experience.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I was actually like I was not saying, did you faint in a sweat lodge? I was going to say, did you faint in the hot yoga? But you went off with the sweat lodge.
oh no, no. I mean, for me, I think it was more trying to balance. One of the things I really love about yoga is that you use muscles that, I mean, I just felt strong in a way that I never did before because I was using muscles that I'd never really used that way before.
Yeah.
I feel really rooted. It's just a different kind of strength
Mm-hmm.
that I really, really like. But no, it was more about getting used to the poses and all that. I mean, like doing locust pose for the first time. I mean, it's pretty painful if you've never done that before. But yeah, no, I didn't almost faint. It's not a terribly hot room. I think it's below 100 degrees. And now since COVID, they did have two rooms, and the room that was not heated, they ended up leasing out to some other sort of wellness business. I can't remember what they do, but they had to downsize a little bit because the place was shut down, and they were doing classes online, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I mean, usually I'd go in there and the place would just be packed, mat after mat after mat, and you just can't do it. Well, at least, I don't know. I haven't been over there for a while. So things are loosening up quite a bit here in Florida. It's pretty much back to normal.
Oh, yeah. You guys are like the wild, wild west.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just let her fly.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the good thing is I live in Palm Beach County, which is in the most progressive part of the state. So, like, it's a progressive county. So even the governor, I mean, they're not gonna, they're not gonna just comply with everything he says. They're gonna do things the right way.
So do you do yin yoga now, though? Like you said, you did a training.
A little bit. That's really all I've done in the last year or so, because the times I've tried to do like vinyasa classes, I've pulled I strained the muscle again in triangle pose at one point when I just thought, I was starting to feel better, but yin I've been able to stick with. And I do a few poses every morning just as part of my morning routine and prayer and all that. And there's some yin in that. And I also do sometimes the Tibetan rites, which I just think is super cool, So I spin every morning. I do that. I do the first one where you spin 21 times.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Just seems, I like it.
Yeah. Yin is such a beautiful practice. It's just about surrendering fully.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, patience with sitting in a pose for a while. The hip openers I really like. It just feels good.
Yeah.
It really does. There's something about it.
And as you're doing, as a massage therapist and craniosacral and working with myofascial, it's something that the fascia and connective tissue have a chance to actually melt and soften and do the work, and your mind also has to sit with that as well, with the discomfort of what's unraveling. Because we hold those stories, and if we're moving from posture to posture, posture to posture, like super fast, we're losing the aspect of integrity and integration. And how is this feeling in your body? That's why the classes that I teach now are sattva yoga, which is really long holds, but it's still vinyasa. You're still doing the chaturangas and moving from posture to posture, but it's kind of like hatha, where you hold the postures for a while, not like forever like yin, but a long enough to actually feel it do work in your body. And then you kind of move mindfully through into the next one. So I love sattva.
There's so many different types of yoga that I would just like to be able to sit with somebody someday who could explain all of them to me. I wish I could find a document somewhere that just explained it all.
Well, I can send you something.
Could you please do that?
Yeah.
I would like that.
Yeah.
And I've done a little bit of Kundalini. I have a friend who's a Kundalini teacher, but the teachers at the studio where I've gone they practice Ashtanga for the most part.
Yeah, I'm certified in that as well.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, I have about 4 different styles actually.
Well, I'm sure you're pretty great at it. You have one of the things that's cool about yoga, I think, is just the different teachers and their different styles. And I can just imagine what your classes must be like, the atmosphere that you create. I bet it's really just a loving, sort of peaceful environment.
Yeah, it's very calming for sure. And you can actually go to YouTube to check out some of my classes if you like. It's the Yoga Home with Aly Paws.
The Yoga Home.
Some free classes on there, and you'll get an idea.
Okay. So, Aly.
So, Tom.
If you had to look back on your life, when was the time I mean, you've talked about you've had some ups and downs in life and maybe strayed from the path a little bit.
Just a wee
I
bit.
definitely have. But when was the time when the younger Aly would have most needed some support or advice? When would that have been, and what would you go back and say to her?
Um, yeah, thank you for this lovely question. I feel like I tap into little Aly Paws all the time, like the 5-year-old self. And, she's very present in my life and I honor her quite a bit. And I think it's because I did probably ignore her for a little bit there, just, in the self abandonment days. So the time, though, that I really felt like I needed support was when I found my mom, a very traumatic experience of finding my mom passed out on the ground. So just even the death of your mom is a big, big thing in your life, but just how it happened. And I mean, there's been several moments where I'm like, okay, I need some support here. But that was pretty predominant in my life recently, about 7 years ago. And I would have said to little Aly, just for one, just breathe. Like everything, it'll pass. Everything does. And through yoga, I've learned that everything that rises falls and it just comes and goes. And that's just part of the cycle. So just being with death and grief is a different relationship now to me. So I would have said to her, and all the other experiences I've had prior to that of finding her would be fully love yourself and you will be all right. Because and it's okay, like sit with it, allow yourself to be sad, like allow yourself to feel the feels. You don't need to numb it. I know we want to, and that's like such a tendency for a lot of us, whether it's workaholic or sexaholic or alcoholic or whatever holic you want to use. It's just a coping mechanism. And so I've developed all these beautiful coping mechanisms to replace it, healthy ones.
Mm. Yeah, and even if we're not using a substance or a behavior, a lot of times it's just a matter of distraction, just avoiding it.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I've worked on a lot the past few years of my life, is just to not to go somewhere else in my brain, not to avoid the emotional distress, to just experience it and
Mm-hmm.
let it pass, because it will. But if you don't, like, you end up carrying it around.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sooner or later we have to feel it, right?
Yeah.
At some point.
It'll show up.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for showing up here with me tonight. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This has been great, Tom. Thank you so much.
The Path to Authenticity proudly supports the I Speak Media Foundation, advancing media literacy education through an evolving series of outreach programs within the communities that need it most. For more information, visit ispeakmedia.org. All right, that's it. Aly Paws. So we referred to quite a few pieces of literature in this episode, and I'll leave links for those. Also, I butchered a Carl Jung quote slightly. It is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So yeah, if you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend who you know would also enjoy it. You can leave a rating or a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. But anywhere you listen, any support you're willing to provide is much appreciated. You can gain early access to this and every episode by becoming a supporter on Patreon. That's patreon.com/thepath-to-authenticity. For as little as $1 a month right now, you can gain, as I said, early access to episodes and other supplemental content. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I did some interviews with Sasha Lipskaya. As we did those, she was recording on her end for her purposes. At the same time, I recorded those on my end, cleaned them up a little bit, and posted them on Patreon so the patrons could listen to it if they wanted to. I do a little extra episode for patrons every Saturday. Usually ranges from 5 to 20 minutes, depending on what I'm talking about. Sometimes I read things, and it's just a little bit of an update on what's happening with me as it relates to this show and my work. So patreon.com/thepath-to-authenticity. By supporting me there, it just enables me to do more of this, which I love. So if you have questions or comments, you can call and leave a message at 561-247-4757. I'd love to hear your feedback. And what I have always envisioned for this show is to begin it by reading listener emails, playing voicemails, responding. You know, I really would love to interact with you guys. And I've been able to do that a little bit, but not a whole lot yet. I really have always envisioned this as a community, and I know it already is, but I want it to be a more close-knit community. I want us to connect. We all are starved for more connection and meaning and depth. I want to thank the band Punk Rock Opera, whose music you hear throughout the show. Their songs are used with permission from the artist and under a Creative Commons license. Thank you to the show's sponsors, the Manor and Windrose Recovery, Her Escape Vortex. Thank you to Wendy Chen with Equivox. And as always, the Path to Authenticity is proud to support the I Speak Media Foundation. Please visit thepath-to-authenticity.com. Blog posts in addition to the podcast episodes can be found there. Have some other content about the guests that I post there. I do something called 20 questions. It's a standardized questionnaire that I give to all the guests, and sometimes I have them posted for the guest in the episode by the time it comes out, but at this point, usually I don't. Anyway, it's a fun little post, and it's a way for me to get more out there about the guest and for you to learn a little bit about them other than what I'm asking them about on the podcast. So all that and more at thepath-to-authenticity.com. You can email the show at thepath-to-authenticity@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, have some Spotify playlists, and have some more of that in the works. I want to do more with sharing music that I appreciate with you all. So I have some ideas about how I'm going to do that. Anyway, thanks again to Aly Paws. I appreciate you guys for investing time in this podcast, for listening to me. I know there are lots of options you have in terms of how you could spend your time, and I don't take it lightly that you spend it with me here. So thanks. Hope you have a great week. Be nice.
Crawled through the desert for days and days. I rose up like a phoenix in flame. Like a record turned over, started new again. I'll play for you and maybe you'll see why my dad always said I buzz like a bee. I died on that street, I died on that road, I died in that fire all those years ago.
Hey, we need a guitar player.
This episode was brought to you by Equivox. For digital marketing or web design services, visit equivox.com.